Streaming, there you
All right. I'm going to call the work session to order for October 4th. We've got two subjects on the agenda tonight. First one is we're going to talk about a little bit about design options for the pedestrian bridge, and we'll be moving to food carts conversation. So Keith, you want to kick us off on the design?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. We have before you just a discussion and a decision point on the bridge. So Bob is overseeing this project. So Bob, I'll turn it over to you to do introductions and just our brief presentation.
Okay, previously in all our presentations, we've been focusing on the majority of these discussions and design considerations on the vertical arches, the high arches, but not the inverse arches. We've had one presentation where we had sort of seen what those inverse arches would look like initially. And then we came up and we had questions about it internally during the design process. And the design team had basically two options. And I believe everybody came up and saw the design options on their computers, got an email with it.
Okay. Everyone put them up so much you can see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have,
He doesn't have the exact things that I
Oh,
have.
I have one option, but not.
Not the other. Well, pass this down. Those are the two options. One of them are, as shown, well, that is there's an inverse.
Maybe this might help. But
Nope, it doesn't have the inverse. The inverse arch, which is the section that goes over the wetlands area, the two wetland areas, are either going to, or recommend to be either vertical components or a continuation of the style of the high arches, which is crossing components. So you're basically looking at either straight up from the arch, inverse arch, it's going to be straight up, or it's going to be crossing components that match the style of the high arches, which are also crossing components.
What color are they? Are they not allowed, are they not able to be the same color as the arch itself?
We haven't determined the color as of yet. We haven't discussed it. I know that we have, staff has discussed the difference between having weathering steel and a painted structure. The exhibits that we've seen so far have shown a white structural component system, and that's quite dramatic. Staff, and Keith, if he wants to lead this.
Yeah, sorry, I just meant, like, one of these pictures shows it being a different color than the arch, and the other one shows it being the same color as the arch. Does the choice reflect our color options, or can we go either way with either option?
We can go a lot of different ways with this. I think that staff has recommendations on colors, and those things can be brought to you as well.
I just wanted to make sure this doesn't impact our color choice.
Right.
No,
I don't want to talk about color choice.
color is completely independent of what
That
style.
wasn't clear by the diagrams. Thank you.
Yeah,
Color is an aesthetic and a maintenance issue.
And it's something we'll be bringing back to the council.
Yeah.
right. And it has, there are benefits to color that go with having your gateway.
Yeah.
Concept as part of it. So there's a lot of different things. When we say color, you can have it, anything you want it to be, really.
Well, I think part of that conversation at a future date is about lighting too, because if we do
We're gonna be
LED
doing lighting.
color, it's going to be
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, so all that comes into play. Right now, we're focused on what the type of structural components on the inverse arches are being. We want to go with the straight up and down look, which I've tallied the staff about. And basically, they like the continuity of having the cross members to match the inverse arches, having cross members to match what the high arch looks like.
Which is reflected up there.
Which is
It's the-
reflected up there,
Yeah,
yes.
I like that.
So,
okay, if we just gave a little bit of explanation about what the two options.
go right ahead, the two options, explanation.
Those are the two different things.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
These are the engineers from KPFF
Sorry, I'm late. And architectural applications.
and architectural applications.
Right. I just want to point out, we do have two options. It's not purely a visual choice. I mean, the reasons, well, it is a visual choice, but there's differences. We all selected together this idea of the bridge where there's a sinusoidal concept where you have the vertical arches, then the inverted arch, and then the vertical arch alternating as it goes along. The vertical arches we talked about are a very efficient way to make a long span structure. You can have a strong bridge with a relatively small amount of material, and that's what you see on the upright arches. And the diagonal bracing on those that you see here, sorry, see it if my computer doesn't go to sleep, work with that very well. That's a very efficient structure. When we invert this thing, although it looks similar, just the same version upside down, the structural forces are being carried in a different way. It's doing a different job. And
It's more compression.
the compression is in different places. And so, yeah, but you're right. And so actually what we found is that it is more efficient on that one to have the intermediate structural pieces be just verticals, right? So the choice is that this with just verticals is a more efficient structure, and we like that intellectually because it has some logic to it, and it sort of lines up with the verticals of the railing. There's this sort of thing there, this rhythm, visual rhythm. We could do this. It can be made to work. It can carry the load. It's less efficient, and these diagonal members actually have to be substantially heavier than these would be, and also heavier than the diagonals on the uprights would be. So although this has the similar pattern to that one, it's actually going to be different visual weights of material. And this one,
These will be thicker than the ones.
will be thicker. This one has a slightly different pattern from that, but it would have to be more consistent in terms of what these members are.
So they might be a similar width to the cross hatches up above, but be vertical instead of cross hatches. So I assume there's a cost difference between the two.
There isn't really a cost difference between the two. I mean, one further point on the materials is that on the belt deck arches, we're looking at the cables. We have a very efficient system of stainless steel. It doesn't require any cooling. We can actually mimic that with the straight verticals. We could use stainless steel, essentially wider rods. So that we've got the same material between the two, but it's definitely a different look. It's one thing that's hard to see on these renderings. It's maybe a little bit clearer on the lower one. Is the top one was when we're still in concept. Paul, we're looking at 4 or 5 different types of ways to do this. So the cables, they would never read as strong as we actually show visually in that top image there, because they're 1.5 inch diameter. So in terms of, it may look like they're very similar on the top between the over arch and the under, but they're actually, you're not going to see that. They're not going to read as clearly. The lower one is, we haven't got a full rendering like on the screen, so it would actually, you wouldn't see the cables. But whatever the pattern of cables is, the lower one is a better representation of just how
It's almost become transparent.
you see. That'll change at night, and some pretty exciting lighting concepts to show you in the future. So, but during the day, they're not going to read as clear. Just to put some clarification on what you're looking at.
Is there, so as you touched on the lighting, is there, in either scenario, would lighting be on those two structures themselves? So you'd have a very different visual pattern. You had lighting on the vertical struts only versus the X.
The lighting component right now is in committee. And so we don't have answers to any lighting other than to say that there's going to be 2 separate systems. One is going to be predicated on safety lighting, which is you've got to have some sort of lighting component system for pedestrian traffic at night to make it safer than cross. And then there's going to be other lighting, which is going to be more of the aesthetic, artistic lighting. And that will come out of the committee's work effort, which we have just started. We'll have our first meeting October 13th.
But this decision would effectively, would certainly impact the aesthetic potential of the two, of the lighting options.
It can, or it can't. That's part and parcel of what, the lighting system designers are gonna provide for us. I mean, you're not talking about the old type of, tube lighting with big bulbs and stuff like that. We're talking about LED lighting that you can very refine, you basically make it look like a laser going up the side of the thing and have it.
Multicolor.
Right, but if you had
Change
LEDs
it
running
for
all of the
holidays.
spreads,
That's
in
one
one
of the
scenario you have
things.
verticals, and the other you have X's.
We have the ability to do a lot of different stuff, but that's gonna come out of what the committee recommendations wants to see.
Who's the committee?
The Arts and Lighting Committee that we've established that includes the cultural art,
Some of the local arts, the parks board,
Okay.
chamber,
Sherwood's the school
the high
district.
school, the YMCA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one's.
I probably knew that, I just didn't remember.
That's like an oversight.
Well, we haven't started yet, so if it
Well, I
was
would love to be
determined
on it.
that we wanted to do that, yeah.
Well, I got the email and I watched that video, by the way, it was really great. I watched it probably a dozen times. And then I screenshotted certain things and then put them together on a document to stare at the two, designs. And at first I thought, oh, the crisscross and the crisscross. And then as I looked at it more and more and watched that video, I'm like, that's too busy for me. Like, I like the straight.
I think that's something of what we're seeing.
Is there just touching, I know the lighting will come later, but is one or the other designs more conducive to lighting? It doesn't matter, because we can adjust the lighting styles.
Yes,
but-
what, I would just say this about the lighting, if it's all right, Bob.
Yeah.
The lighting design is gonna enhance, the image, right? It's gonna make it beautiful, it's gonna accentuate what a beautiful thing this is that you've invested in as a gateway. Whether the bridge has vertical elements or it has diagonal elements, those are just gonna be further enhanced at night. One's not better than the other, it's just different, okay.
For my eye, the more invisible the verticals could be, the better. And so, I mean, obviously with being safe. The calling card of this bridge is the sine wave, right? And so I'm with Kim, I think the X's, even if they're smaller, but if they have to be thicker and stuff like that, it is not as, it's distracting from the flow. So we want, and I know the lighting will do, but anything we can do to enhance the signature sign curve feels like the right move for my aesthetics.
That's exactly what we're going for. Grab everything we can do to make that work, yeah.
I
I
also.
already said mine.
I also prefer now, I've changed my mind, I prefer the vertical. I think the fact that they're of a smaller profile, and makes me like them better. I think it will call more attention to the arch and less to the supports. And also, I think when I imagine them being lit up, I think it's better when those are lit versus lit X's. Not that it has to be that way, but it could be.
Did you have your thoughts?
I like the X's, but I could go either way. It's not something I'm willing to die on. I like them and both of them look good.
So look at this image right here, where if you pause it at the place where the railing and the X's intersect, there are so many lines there. Whereas, and again, I'd hope it feels like the engineers would consider this to line up even visually the handrail line with the vertical line.
Oh,
So
that's absolutely, you see it.
Yeah, so.
They talked about that briefly.
Oh, did they? Okay, yeah, because but it would make even more of a difference on the ones that are going over, right? So that essentially you're extending the vertical handrail pole all the way, even if
I
it's
don't think we
not.
have that option.
What's that?
We haven't been presented with that option on the.
I know, but right now you've got crisscrosses. I assume on this one, where these are, you would have straight ones, right?
No, we're only talking about the under.
Oh, only the under. Okay, all right. So above,
It's gonna be crisscross.
It's crisscross everywhere?
Yes. The high arches are
Well,
crisscross.
you can't have those straight?
That
I don't
ship
know if I
said.
like that.
That
I don't-
ship said.
I don't know if I like that, mixing them up.
Well,
So,
so the
Okay.
question is,
All
if
right.
the high arches are pretty much set in stone
Okay,
with the style that we have, we got that approved. And the inverse arches are the ones that are under discussion right now.
okay,
So
just the.
decide which type of inverse arch you want to work with,
yeah,
either the straight or the crossed.
here we can see again, that the beginning shows the mixed,
Yeah,
right, the crisscross and the vertical.
Right.
all right, well,
Okay.
I like that these are of the same weight as each other. I think that is way more visually important than the crisscrosses versus verticals. Like, 'cause when you look at the other one that we're gonna see in a second, now you're gonna see, we're still on the first one, right?
Yeah.
When I get to option two, what you see is great, you have the same crisscrossing on both, but the weight of the lower ones is so much heavier.
It's gonna show option two.
It's gonna show option 2 in just a moment. Tried to give you a lot of
I
dry,
love that.
dry unders.
That was very helpful.
Kim was a big fan of it.
I was.
Can you pause it right there? And I'm sure you've looked at it, but we're not gonna have any line of sight issues with that.
No.
Going there.
And
Here
here,
comes
here
option
the other one starts, and you can actually see a difference in the weight of the members if you look carefully. How, you can see how heavy it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Get to John's point, and the reason this was about the cables are tension. That's why they're so thin, but below their pressure actually exits, so that's why they end up being, from a buckling perspective, being larger.
There's actually a torque on it too, right? Because it's.
There's that's some effect.
Do we have any input from the mayor since he wasn't even here? Anybody know?
Yeah, so although I like that visually, whatever's gonna be the most efficient for the construction. So when I said I'm not willing to die on cross for, just the visual piece of it, whatever's gonna be best for the overall instruction.
Construction
Both looks
is,
good
is
to me.
insignificant. So it's coming down to what would you prefer aesthetically? Because that's really what we're looking at.
We got 2 down here for the straight.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go straight, even though, what do you think? Yeah. I think I'm with Doug, if the ones underneath were the exact same size, I'd do crisscross, but just to match it all the way across, but with them already being different, I feel like making them disappear is more important. So. So about you,
Tim?
Mr. Rosen?
I came in here thinking I liked the straight ones. And then 3/4 of the way through this, I decided I liked the crisscross.
So we flip flop.
And,
That's why we needed this work session.
but, the piece on the crisscross, I keep going back to in my head is because of the different form factors. It's just, it's not gonna look the same. So I'm fine.
So for the vertical members, that's the consensus of the group.
Option one.
We spent.
I'm putting it in writing now. I just have to put a number here, 1 or 2. Okay, it's 1,
Sold.
done.
So besides lighting design, which we're gonna have a committee, is we have other decision points.
The arts, the arts committee is the same one as the lighting committee, so they're gonna do what type of art you would like associated with the bridge, what that means.
That's the same.
I have a dumb question.
Everyone does.
I have a question, like, maybe it's a dumb question, but maybe not. I don't remember us discussing and deferring our choices on this to other committees. Like, did we do that? Did we agree to like offload this on arts commissions and other places? I assumed that the council would be making these recommendations.
Oh, don't get me wrong, you will be making the final.
Yeah, but if we're not involved in the process, how many things have been eliminated before we ever talked?
No, you haven't been eliminated on any of the process.
I think it's a good idea, and if you want to volunteer, that's great.
Yeah.
It's add a council member, but I also think it's a great idea to have cast a wider net.
Agreed, we weren't consulted, it just happened.
I remember a conversation, I just can't remember where and when it happened.
Or something too.
Okay.
Maybe I.
It was part of, it was part of the last bit of our public, our council meeting or work session. We were showing everything next steps. Arts and lighting were part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember we were gonna,
How we did it.
things were gonna come back to
Dropped
us.
it. The fact that we didn't include city council, I'll take the blame on that one. I'm not very conversant with that.
Well, I Jennifer was on, so our biggest, that's Renee, she wear two hats, no, or will be a board member.
So anybody who wants to come and be a part of this thing, by all means.
It sounds like Doug wants to put me on as an alternate, if he can't make it. I'd like to.
If Renee isn't there,
That's good with me.
I would love to be on it, but if somebody else cares
Go ahead.
as strong as I do.
Nope, I'm all for you, Doug.
And then, have you already discussed, I mean, is the color set?
No, that's all stuff with the.
That's
Gotta
part
come
of the
back
lighting?
in the,
Color, lighting, and art are all coming.
Okay.
well, actually, color will come very soon. The lighting and the artistic aspect we want to go through, because that's really more blah, blah, blah. The color is basically, the structure is going to be what you determine it to be.
Some recommendations.
With some recommendations about that, so.
Recommendations from experts or from them? From you?
From the-
Okay. So what, so then we
from
don't
the
have an
design-
outside
The
committee?
design team comes up with that, we give it to you,
Okay.
and you tell us what we're gonna go with.
I'm
And
very
then-
much looking forward to that.
And then the committee is looking at, what do you do to enhance it?
Gotcha. Well, I super appreciate you guys coming in today and presenting this to us. I know we are, as a council, been pushing pretty hard because we want to get this project done and get the benefit to our community. And I know you guys are moving fast. I appreciate that. Absolutely. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
I apologize. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, it's been non-inclusive of having the consultant on board. If you've got any questions about the project itself or where I'm leading it and how I'm pushing on everything in my own way.
My only question is who's gonna be leading it after October 31st?
After October 19th.
19th. I wasn't sure what your date was.
Wow, that's like 2 weeks. Every week we're gonna do 2 weeks.
11 work days. No,
I'm just kidding, no.
no, it's a valid point, because I have been very vocal and very persistent about where I think it should go. So this project, to a large extent, is me driving it forward in that direction. I'm still on the government payroll until December 2nd. This is an extended vacation. So I intend to keep my nose in the business of this project a little bit to sort of keep it on track. But there will be somebody else who will take it over, who will be competent and will know what the rules are.
Of course.
Thank you, Mom. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Excellent, thank you.
You don't have to hang on. We're here for 4 hours. You don't have to stay.
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, is food cards.
We're ready to bring you on.
And I'm so disappointed.
I know, I was about to say.
Stop for being, it was glad.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
They cast away.
But I believe this conversation started with some, using some other communities. I took the opportunity to talk to a couple of people in the community and their thoughts, but I don't know if you guys prepare a presentation.
Just a short little presentation I sent out last week.
We're able to, by the way.
Just trying to go over. Awesome.
There was just talk on social media, you know.
Yeah. I think what will become clear, if it's not already in this presentation, is that there's really 3 different categories of things. Called food cards. I think it's important when the public is talking about it, but when we're talking about it, we're distinguishing. Thinking it very
Those are my dogs.
It's a cute.
So good evening, council. So tonight we're gonna have a conversation around mobile food vendors. The purpose of the
Like, can you
meeting.
go back on that?
Oh, yeah.
I was just talking about, I think it's it's important to distinguish between these different categories. I don't know if you're getting more.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we will.
I'll shut up.
no, it's okay. So I'm gonna provide information on our code and how we address inquiries that come in about mobile food vending within the city. And then we're gonna have a conversation and you can provide us with the next steps that you may have. But to get to the question here about what is a food cart, there's kind of three general broad categories for food cart operations. You have those that are truly mobile. You have stationary carts operating in partnership maybe with a primary use. And then you have what we call kind of these food cart pods, which are multiple carts on a site. And sometimes they have an accessory building and they're really kind of are seen as destination spots. Yeah, so some examples here, truly mobile vendors are really, hot dog push carts, ice cream trucks, trucks that move on and off on a site to serve lunch. And many times they're just associated with event activities. Stationary carts that are accessory to a primary use. These are carts that you kind of see, in different sorts of lots, commercial lots. Sometimes you see them in gas stations or convenience stores. Many times they're associated with breweries and tap rooms, and other retail developments.
Can I ask a quick question, the first one? So, and I'm just dredging out my previous experience with this, but I've seen cases where like a business, like maybe a manufacturing business, right, will contract with the food truck to show up from like 11 to 12
Serve
outside the
lunch.
building. Have we ever got any inquiries or that kind of service?
We have, and I'm gonna can I answer that question
Yeah,
in
yeah.
3 more slides?
No problem.
Okay. And then the last here are really those cart pods that we talked about, those destination spots. So you have a number of carts located within a food venue. These pods can provide different amenities, so you can have like an accessory building that serves, beer and wine, seating, bathroom facilities as well. Pictured here, that barn at Hickory Station, that's in Albany. The middle photo is the food cart pod in Happy Valley. And then on the left, the picture on the right is a food cart pod in Portland. So what does our code say about mobile food vendors here in Chillicothe? Our code for food vendors is actually in the outdoor sales and merchandise display code section of our code. And they're what we refer to them as permanent. You have to be permanent on a site. So it's a permanent outdoor eatery on a site. It can be located in any zone here in Sherwood. However, you have to go through the site plan process and it's a conditional use. And so when we talk to a food cart truck vendor, or even somebody that wants to install a cart on a site, we tell them you have to go through the site planning process and it's a conditional use. It requires a type 3 hearing with the hearings officer and it's about $5,000.
It's like getting the old way we used to get chicken. It's-
Yes. And basically, he wants to hear that information and they're like,
Yeah.
thanks, but no thanks.
Okay, but we see, like both as events, we see trucks that come to park for like Robin Hood.
So those trucks that come for the Robin Hood Festival, they get a special use permit through the city and that kind of includes that use for the food truck vending out on the park or big lot.
And what about the ice cream trucks that drive around in the summer or the Kona Ice or?
No, we have told ice cream truck vendors that have come in that you can't sell things from the right of way. You tell them that, whether or not, hey,
So all of those trucks and Kona Ice, everybody that drive are basically operating without proper authorization. I mean, it's kind of like, don't care, because why would
what's the receipt of the claim?
we?
Can I ask a quick question? What was the date on this code? 1690?
Oh, that is an excellent
Old.
question. It's
Old.
it's pretty old. I want to say maybe that it was around 2013. It was updated, when it was last updated.
Surprised.
So right now, if a business wants to have a food truck for a special event, they have to go through either special event permit or conditional use. Is that what you're saying?
But it sounds like the conditional use would be if it was, they wanted it for more of a permanent or regular
Okay,
use.
so right now,
They just had a
business can do
weekend.
it with special event.
So what we see happening is always special event permits.
So a business who brings the food cart for an event includes a special use, are they violating that code, I would assume? If it's on private property in their parking lot?
So if they're like a caterer to maybe like a special event that's going on, like I haven't received any complaints. And they're like catering an event.
So like someone pulling a barbecue truck up to the back of the arts center to cater a fundraiser. I mean, but how do we handle that in our code? Is that all in our code?
See,
Well, but, I mean,
And my question is, would you even want to regulate that?
yeah, I mean, because, I mean, I've been to
Yeah.
weddings that have food carts as their caterers.
And not if it's like a one day, you know,
It's like,
just as the person who brought this forward,
Yeah.
that I think all of this is interesting, and if we have holes in our code, we should absolutely fill them. The reason I wanted to talk about this was not in regards to permanent, or I'm sorry, to temporary uses or event uses. I think it seems to be what's working is working, and I have no issue with any of it, and if people bring something on a site and they don't get the right permit, we might want to clean it up a little. The reason I actually brought this forward is the third thing, which is kind of the more permanent structures, the central building, and
Yeah.
everything being permanent, and do we allow for that, and is that something we'd be interested in allowing for? Not to derail the conversation, if
It's
people
not the
want to.
taco truck that showed up in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
sat up there for 4 days and gets a complaint, and you got an obvious.
So we have had only one inquiry in the past 5 years that I've been with the city about establishing a food cart pod, that third option. And they wanted to go in the Taunton employment area and no.
that's funny, because that, if I had, take it, that's maybe the number one question I get asked when people say, you're on the city council, oh, when are we gonna get food carts?
Yep. Same here,
So,
especially in my current role, my paid role.
So we get,
That's the wrong place for it.
we get,
no, I know, but I'm just,
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
I get that all the time, and we did have, when we went out to bid for the RFP for the schoolhouse property, the other, was that the one you're talking about, or is that a second one?
that's the second one.
Okay, so we did have two.
Two. Yeah.
Oh,
Because we got a proposal for a food cart pot there.
Yeah, and some of go ahead, with your presentation, I'll wait.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm done.
Another site that there's been two sites that have been heard referenced in Old Town. One is the spot that's outside of the art center.
Yeah.
That one, and creating a space like that. And the other one is across from Clancy's next to Symposium, using their lab. Those are the two spots that are most referenced next to.
where the.
They're locked.
The parking
So-
lot.
Oh, but that,
Oh,
yeah,
they're-
we've got a tent over now.
I mean, it's not for us to decide where.
But I-
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
when people have spoken to me about it, as a counselor and as in my work role, those are the two spots that are brought up.
And but, seeing as we own this, the old school site, and, frankly, I love the idea of a center building that does beer and wine, but frankly, one of the other big. Can I finish my sentence? Okay, so one of the other big things that's very popular, and I can see being very popular with middle schoolers that are walking home is, in Utah, they've got 5 different kinds of Sodalicious or like these gourmet soda places that are, again, a place just for kids to drop $3 on a soda or so of some sort and hang out on their way home, but I just, like, it feels like you could do something special there with some additional places to give more options for food in Old Town and places to come. Anyway,
So, I think we're putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, pun intended. I think the market will decide what gets built and where. I think, my question is, if someone were to propose building something like this, is it allowed? And if not, are we interested in
So it
providing
seems like
the
it's
code
allowed.
that would allow it?
Well, first,
What's
for
that?
option three, someone can
Yes.
do this today. They just have to go through the site planning process.
And a conditional,
You get a conditional use.
So it's not an allowed use in any area.
it's not an allowed use in any area, and that's something we, we may want to fix in the tables.
but so isn't another option for us as a city to do it and own it?
I
Oh, no,
don't think I'm
because-
interested in that.
No, own the building like we own the arts center. And then get a vendor to run it, or, you know what I mean, like get a tenant to be the bar and all the other stuff.
I'm not sure I'm interested in that at this point.
Maybe you have
No, I was getting a piece of hair.
Oh, okay.
I do have one other question about the permanent location. So I know one of the mayor's objections is that we don't get any taxes from those mobile ones, we would get taxes from the central building, right? And then they would essentially pass it along to their.
Value to the
Yes, that's the value
property.
of the property.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Share of that.
it would probably be minor, but you would get some.
I don't think, if you've seen some of these places, it ain't minor. Like these are $1 million build outs.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, yeah. Pretty cool space.
I mean, the one in Estacada, I know was over $1 million.
So the only other place that I can see this working is in Sherwood West across from the high school.
I think there's some places, but again, I don't think that's we don't have to solve that as part of this conversation.
But the middle one is kind of what you're talking about there, where they have a substantial building. But the picture really didn't show up because it's
No.
on the outside. And the inside, it is a restaurant.
It's a bar that doesn't serve food, and instead, they have X number of spots where trucks are permanently parked, hooked up to city water, city sewer, city electrical. And you sit in the bar, you order whatever drinks you want, and you walk out to one of the 10 trucks. Trailers really is what they are, and you buy whichever food item you want, you take it back into the bar and you eat it. They usually are indoor, outdoor, they have roll-up doors, you've got indoor seating, outdoor seating. But yeah, these things they're not, I mean, the value of that property is not low. I mean, it would be, I mean,
I mean, you're talking the deltas, there's gonna be a delta between.
sure,
A bigger development and
Sure.
not just gravel, for sure. I know that's one of the mayor's concern, the other concern he has, and I think this is where dialogue comes in. That second is, do we have enough foot traffic, will it cannibalize?
That was my question.
Our
That's always
businesses
my concern.
downtown? I know when Portland first started doing this, all the businesses claimed this, the restaurant businesses, but some of them just joined the game.
the data on that is interesting.
I know it is, but my point is, I think if we're gonna relook at this, I think we should relook at it in the context of the downtown overlay. And what do we want for downtown, sure, we can kind of, it's been a long time since we've looked at that, it's probably about time to open that up and take a look at that and have this part of that conversation. What does that look like?
I don't think this needs to be isolated to that overlay though. Like, why not let the market decide where this gets built?
I think,
Well,
for the overlay.
if it's allowed.
I agree, but I think it's important to talk about that.
I do think it's important to talk about the overlay. I think that can be, if we decide to allow this, then we can also say, okay, that's also allowed in the overlay.
Yeah.
Or we can, but
But
it
it
gets
gets,
separate
but it gets,
conversation.
by opening up the overlay, we can engage our stakeholders out in the community and get their input, talk to businesses downtown and get their input and make sure we're doing it in just, in general.
Right, well, I mean, we can do that regardless of whether it's
Yeah.
part of the overlay. A lot of the places where these have opened have had, existing restaurants particularly, have a lot of the same concerns. And what a lot of them have found is that these actually are net generators of traffic. They bring traffic into areas And then a lot of those people then, of course, end up frequenting those other restaurants and businesses, right?
A lot of the downtown restaurants create their own food carts.
And that too.
Yeah. So we have a couple of minutes here before our CEP meeting. Is there any other? So what do we want to do on next steps on this?
I'd like to investigate it further.
I do too, because there's something about our code that makes people go, it's not worth it.
So maybe the next step is maybe can staff come back with some recommendations on how we engage the community on this and what maybe taking a look at the downtown overlay would look like, bring in another work session.
I'd still like to see it separate from Old Town Overlay. I don't, because that is a very long process and this can be,
But I don't want
we
to.
can implement this first and then include it in the Old Town Overlay. If we want to. We don't
I
have
just
to.
want
I'm not.
I just want to be careful that we don't change things downtown before we fix. That's
I don't want to slow down the process on this to tie it to the Old Town Overlay.
so come back with some options.
That's my concern.
And how we approach this, because I think it's we need to engage the involved.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
So can I just want to hear from Alan, because we have some side conversation going on, what your input was.
Well, I, myself and Amber Gardner both attempted to do this about 4 to 5 years ago. We made 2 stabs at doing this in the lot next to Symposium in particular. We were in talks with the landowner prior to my wife doing the first original development there that went under and the second development. And that was exactly our idea, was to put a central area in there to do that. And we got the, no, it will never happen in Old Town, we do town overlay and so on and so forth, don't even try it.
It had to have been more than 5 years ago, because that was.
It was,
Yeah,
I'll have to ask. It might be 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
But I'm super happy to see that it's now rejoining the conversation. How that affects Old Town businesses and stuff like that is a whole nother level. But I do like the idea that you guys are at least opening this up. My strong feeling on it, it has to be driven by the market. I'm not looking to compete with more tenants of the city of Sherwood for that dollar with the people that have been. So I would expect it to be something that went to public property and you guys work with them to get past the hurdles that they need. Maybe it's me that ends up being that person that develops that property. So it's nice to see that it's moving forward. I think that they've had their run for the last 10 or 12 years. People are understanding that these are a viable place. They can be a great draw for a community. It has lots of good options.
And my statement to Alan was tonight, a good conversation to include with Main Street as we talk about Main Street.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my statement to him.
So
Are you still on the board of Main Street?
I believe I am. I think I might be the second longest running one.
All right, so does staff feel like they have marching orders for next steps?
Yes, I feel comfortable.
Awesome.
Good work. I'm
Yeah, great
excited.
work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doug, for bringing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for supporting it.
We will move on to CEP grant. That's a separate meeting though.
Yeah.
So we're gonna close